And yeah, I'll do a brief intro. So welcome to our Policy and Practice Forum. I'm Jeffrey Berry, CEO of Tennessee Environmental Council, and we're just going around and letting folks introduce themselves and say where they're joining us from. And sorry I interrupted you there, Mary, but if you want to go ahead and pick up where I interrupted you, pick up where you left off.
Hi, I'm Mary Wilder. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee. I'm on the board of the Overton Park Conservancy, Memphis Park Friends, manage a green line garden, native garden, pollinator garden, butterfly garden, and I'm a master gardener. So thank you. And I'm on the Tennessee Environmental Council Board. Thank you.
My name is Mike Wyatt.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, good morning. I'm a retired civil engineer and urban land use planner from upstate New York. I spent a lot of time working with municipalities and their growth plans, visioning the future. And I was also on the village board of Cambridge, New York. Not the big Cambridge, it's a little Cambridge in New York. And we put together comprehensive plans and design guidelines to help Cambridge become a walkable main street and very sustainable farming community.
Welcome, Mike. And Diane, I think you were next.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm Dianearvin. I live here in Nashville. I just finished the Tennessee Naturalist Program course through this Cedars Hill chapter, and I'm an ambassador for the Xerxes Society for pollination conservation.
And where are you located, Diane? Maybe, I'm sorry if I missed that.
In Nashville.
Okay, great.
I'm Grace Stranch. I'm the new COO of Harpeth River Conservancy. I'm also vice chair of the Middle Tennessee Sierra Club and the Tennessee lead for the Environmental Defense Fund ambassadors. And I'm really excited to see what y'all are working on and see how we can collaborate and work together to have a cleaner ecosystem in our state.
Congratulations on your awesome new position, Grace. We're excited to work with you.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, I am Frederick Gonzalez. I came across this forum job searching online. I just finished my master's over at the University of Edinburgh and moved here a week ago and wanted to try and get a lay of the land and see what people are doing for conservation and sustainable agriculture and all that sort of stuff, make some connections and have some conversations.
Hey, excellent. Welcome to town, and look forward, and welcome to this community as well.
Thanks.
We have time for a few more intros if someone wants to just jump right in. Where are you joining us from?
I'm Julie Burns. I live in Rutherford County, the home of the largest landfill in the state. I'm a past president of SOCM, statewide organizing for community empowerment, which has worked on environmental issues for 40 years. I live right next to the Cedar Barrens, Flat Rock Cedar Barrens Natural Preserve that's in Rutherford County, and have been involved in working on preventing our landfill from continuing to do a lot of things it's doing and hoping to try to get it closed down when it fills up, which is pretty soon. That's all for now.
Hi. Well, this is Don Safer. I'm from Nashville. I'm on the board of the Tennessee Environmental Council and was board chair of the council of the TEC for about 10 years, 2004 to 14 or thereabouts. I also work with the Tennessee chapter of the Sierra Club and National Sierra Club on the nuclear free team of the National Club, and have engaged a good bit with TVA policies over the years, attempting to make them the world leader in renewable energy and abandoning all the bad old power sources, including nuclear and coal and gas. And glad to be here. Glad to see everybody else here.
Welcome, Donnie. I'm Dan Drenko, longtime energy justice and climate organizer. I wear too many hats, probably. Tennessee Interfaith Power and Light, Creation Care Ministries of the United Methodist Church, Tennessee Conference, and Tennessee Alliance for Progress, Climate Nashville, and on the executive committee of the Middle Tennessee Sierra Club Group.
Excellent. Welcome, Dan and Don and everybody. Anybody else want to introduce themselves? We still got some time here.
Hello, everyone. Oh. Hold on just a moment. All right, sorry about that. I'm in the same office as Stewart Clifton, so you're probably seeing his screen light up. I just moved here to Nashville, graduated from Center College, moved from Rugby, Tennessee, Morgan County, and so I'll be working with Stewart Clifton on some policy related stuff. So I'm excited to learn more about environmental advocacy here.
Hey, Jeff, it's Sharon Bell.
Hey, Sharon.
I know a few of you, Stewart and some other people I know from political things over the years. I am not as involved as this impressive group in organizations, but I am a landowner. I have a farm, a Century Farm in Bedford County, and I'm fascinated with one of the latest things in the conservation movement, which is wilding or rewilding. And I am very much moving in that direction with my farm. I live in Nashville, but have the farm in Bedford County, and sold all the cattle off a year ago, and am looking to establish a forest on my property along with native grasses and native plants, but really want to turn this into something that is what I hope can be an example of how you can make a difference on your own property.
That's excellent. And I'll use your wonderful comments, Sharon, to segue into the overview of this meeting today. And you will all have a chance to introduce yourselves again, and if you haven't done so already, in the breakout sessions that are coming later in this meeting. We're going to keep it to 2 hours, so we'll be done by noon. And if you have, the conversations in the chat are, I think, an important part of this meeting. So please utilize that and chat away as we listen to our esteemed presenters. Everybody here is already passionate about the environment and has a great level of expertise and involvement and experience in this movement in Tennessee. And hey, we're looking at it right here. This is Tennessee's environmental movement, the cream of the crop. So it's exciting to be collaborating with all of you. And the purpose of the policy and practice, and of course the theme today is the state of the environment and ways forward. And so each presenter will be touching on that theme. But it is important to acknowledge where we are today. And as you look around the world and see what needs to be done, what is the work that needs to be done to care for the environment? Because the big picture issues of global warming, habitat loss, microplastics touching every body of water on the planet in our bodies as well, bodies of water and human bodies. These are global issues, but they come down to the practice we have every day. And what you're talking about doing, rewilding your property, Sharon, that's a beautiful example of practice, personal practice, that we believe leads to policy change. And so we want to hit it from both angles, policy and practice. What you do in your everyday life matters, especially if we're preaching policy change. It'd behoove us to practice what we preach. And that's why we call it policy and practice. So as you all know, I am CEO of Tennessee Environmental Council. We're a statewide nonprofit organization founded in 1970. We just turned 50 last December. Our 51st birthday is coming up in December, this coming December. December 11th is the actual day we signed our charter. And our mission is helping people and communities improve our environment. And we are working towards thriving habitats, a circular economy, and climate balance in Tennessee. That's our vision. And we feel it's important to know where we are and what the world looks like today and where we want to go, what direction we want to head. And so the speakers today will present different sections of or subsets of those three key areas of thriving habitats, circular economy, and climate balance. I'm excited to hear what the presenters have to share. And I did put it up there in the chat, and near the very top of the chat, you will see the topics and the speakers. Now, John Fenderson is ill today, so he will not be able to present. Like I said, this is being recorded, and we will post it on our platform so you can watch it again and share it with others. We won't be recording the breakout room portion, but the presentations will all be recorded. And I will be making a couple announcements, and we don't charge anything for this event in this virtual format, but I will post a link, and we invite all of you to make a donation at some point. It's not required, but certainly would encourage you to consider that. And one brief announcement is Tennessee Environmental Council is getting ready to launch, you're the first to hear it outside our organization, a statewide Tennessee Eco Challenge 2021. And it's an opportunity to spread the word about things people can do and engage people from across Tennessee, from the towns and the rural areas and the cities, in the practices that are going to improve our environment immediately. And so that is coming up. The Eco Challenge will be announced in early registration on October 21st. So those are some announcements, and that's the overview of today's presentation. And with that, I will go ahead and introduce our first speaker. And you got bumped up a notch, Maggie, from Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. By the way, when we do the breakout sessions, you will all get to choose which topic area, which session you want to go into. And we will do that at the conclusion of the speakers. So pay attention to what each speaker has to say. And if you want to learn more, get more involved in that arena, or as I like to call domain of the environment, caring for the environment, then you can choose that in your breakout session for the second half of this meeting. So I'll hand it over to you, Maggie, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Great to be here this morning. And I'm going to kick us off with a brief presentation on renewable energy and climate solutions in Tennessee, and include 3 actions to take on this topic. So first, just a little bit about SACE. We are the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy is what SACE stands for. And we work for responsible and equitable energy choices all across the Southeast. And that includes Tennessee. I am in our Knoxville office, which is our headquarters, but we also cover the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi. And today I'm going to go through things at 3 different levels, and then we'll have action items to take related to each of these 3 levels, because Tennessee is pretty unique in the way that the electricity system is set up. So we're going to look at the local level, the regional level, and then the national level, and see how does that relate to us folks in Tennessee. And also feel free to chime in with questions during this, or we can have a quick Q&A at the end, or also meet me in the breakout session. So starting local, there is a local landscape of electric, municipal, and cooperative utilities. There are a total of 153 of these served by the Tennessee Valley Authority, and that covers somewhere about 95 to 99% of all of the electricity that's sold in the state of Tennessee comes from TVA, but you don't pay a bill directly to TVA. You pay a bill to your municipal utility or your cooperative utility. So what does that mean? A municipal utility is owned by a city entity, typically regulated by a board that is either appointed or approved by local leadership. Some combination of the mayor or the council is the council is typical. Whereas a cooperative tends to be in more rural areas, and those utilities are owned by each of the customers. Sometimes they're called member owners or customer owners. And usually there's every year some sort of election to a board of directors, which is the regulator of those kinds of utilities. I'm also going to use the term LPC, which stands for local power company. So that's the term that encompasses both municipal and cooperative utilities that serve the state of Tennessee. And you can see the maps a little small, but you can go on TVA's website and blow it up and kind of see the whole landscape. There are anything from very small municipal utilities. There are some cooperatives that cover a wide geography, but still serve a fairly small load. And then there are pretty large municipal utilities in the state of Tennessee. The largest is Memphis Light, Gas, and Water, MLGW, followed by Nashville Electric Service, NES. Some other large ones are here in Knoxville. KUB is the Knoxville Utilities Board, and then EPW or EPB of Chattanooga, and the Middle Tennessee Electric Co-op, which serves the area that's kind of south and east of Nashville, and recently merged with Murfreesboro. So that's the kind of lay of the land locally. And then taking a step back and looking at TVA specifically, TVA's role is pretty unique in the power sector. They do what a lot of utilities do, which is determine what sorts of energy sources to use. So every few years, they do what's called an integrated resource plan, see how much electricity is needed, what is the cost of different resources, do any of the power plants need to be retired, what sorts of new resources need to be built, and that sort of thing. So those kinds of decisions are made by TVA, not at the local power company level. TVA also serves as the regulator of the LPCs, specifically around their rates. So whatever NES or MLGW or KUB is charging you, that has to go through TVA first. TVA also is the regulator of rooftop solar interconnections. They work with the LPCs on that. And TVA is the one who implements energy efficiency programs. Now, TVA was founded, and I couldn't fit a whole lot of history on this slide. I wanted to be brief, but as I'm sure many of you know, TVA has a very long and interesting history from its very beginning. And one thing that we track at SACE is carbon emissions and the rate of decarbonization. As we know, we need to get to, the science is telling us we need to get to global economy-wide zero emissions by 2050. And to do that, we need to have emissions by 2030 or around that time frame. And in order to do so, I'm just kind of walking us back here from the science. In order to do so, we need to get the electric sector to about 80% carbon-free electricity by 2030. So that's the kind of top line goal. And TVA has only recently had a decarbonization goal. Their statement is that they aspire to get to net zero carbon by 2050. And that's again out of line because we're under the understanding we need to get to zero carbon by 2035. They've also said that they're going to retire all their coal plants by 2035, which we think is a positive step to retire coal plants. Obviously, that needs to happen to get to zero carbon. but zero coal is not the same thing as zero carbon. So a couple points here. TVA has announced a number of solar investments recently. That's a positive step. However, most of those solar investments have been for individual corporate customers. So you and me are not getting those, clean electrons flowing to our house. TVA does lag. This one is my personal pet peeve here, is that TVA lags the Southeast in annual savings from energy efficiency. About 10, 15 years ago, TVA was really, leading on investments in energy efficiency, and it's come a long way since then, and not in a good way. They have pretty much done away with all financial incentives on energy efficiency, except for select matching grants for low-income weatherization, which is an important thing. We just, we need to be doing more on that front. And as I mentioned, TVA is planning on retiring coal plants, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, they are also planning to replace that with new gas power plants, large, what are called combined cycle plants. And that would include 2 new gas pipelines in the state of Tennessee that have been proposed. One to replace Cumberland, which is north and west of Nashville, and one to replace Kingston, which is due west of Knoxville. So you can see from the chart, we do an annual decarbonization report on all the utilities in the Southeast. So that includes TVA. This is the chart of TVA's carbon emissions. You can see that from 2010 to 2020, they were cutting carbon very quickly. They were retiring coal. They were building new gas and new nuclear to replace that coal, but it did cut their annual emissions in CO2 quite a bit. But the red line there is their kind of current trajectory, business as usual, trajectory, which shows basically a flattening out in the rate of decarbonization, whereas that orange and green lines are pathways to zero by either 2050 or 2035. So we are pushing for TVA to bend that curve down and keep decarbonizing at that higher rate, and try and go for that zero by 2035 or even earlier date. That's TVA. I'm going to briefly talk nationally. There are some things going on nationally that are relevant to everybody that pays an electric bill in the country. The first is that the Biden administration issued an executive order that federal agencies should be carbon free by 2035. And guess what? TVA is kind of sort of a federal agency. So it's still unclear whether or how much that applies to TVA, but we haven't seen them making any announcements that they are on a trajectory to meet that target. Then the second bullet is, you've probably heard there's a budget reconciliation package in front of Congress. There's a whole bunch of news about it, just day to day, hour to hour these days. There are 2 parts of that that are particularly relevant to both TVA, local power companies, and electric utilities all across the country. The first is an extension of clean energy tax credits. This is the ITC and PTC, historically available for wind and solar. So that will now be available for things like storage. But most importantly for us in TVA land is that that is extended to entities that don't have a tax base. So that means that TVA itself can now take advantage of those clean energy tax credits, and the LPCs as well. The other piece that's in the budget reconciliation package is a clean electricity payment program, CEPP, that would get the sector to about 80% clean electricity by 2030, using a combination of financial incentives, carrots and sticks for the utilities. Basically, if the utilities add 4% clean electricity in a single year, good job, you get a reward for that. If they don't, then they pay a penalty on that. So it would accelerate clean additions in the Southeast. The table there basically is the business as usual annual increases and a number of utilities, TVAs there at the bottom. You can see that they are increasing at 0.3% per year based on their current trajectory. And that's obviously, pretty far from that 4% per year. However, they are at about 60% clean electricity of their baseline, one of the highest baselines in the region for these utilities. Why is that? That's because they have mostly a whole bunch of nuclear as well as the hydro resources. The last bit, so the clean energy tax credits, the CEPP, along with electrification, are a major part of the plan to reduce emissions as the US Paris Agreement's goal of a 40% reduction in total emissions. I forgot to put the year, that's by 2030, about a 45 to 50% reduction in total emissions. So this is a key part to get us there. The electric sector is one of the most carbon intensive, the highest carbon emitting sectors in the country, but also as we are electrifying buildings and transportation, we can also, plug that into cleaner electricity. So different ways to take action. I can have this up in the breakout if folks, if there isn't enough time to go through all of these, but at the local level, absolutely look up your local utility, see who that board regulator is, reach out to them and say, we want more clean generation sources, we want energy efficiency, and then take that a step further and get involved with, find out how that nomination or election process happens and get involved, advocating for, strong climate champions to be on your local board. At the regional level, 2 levels here. First, there's the email address for the board of TVA. So you can email them, tell them your concerns, tell them you want, here I say energy efficiency and more clean generation sources, but absolutely, to make it your own. Another option is I should have mentioned in the TVA portion, but TVA is regulated by the board. Those members are nominated by the president and approved by the Senate. But first they have to go through the Senate Environment and Public Works EPW committee. So there is the website for EPW committee in the Senate. You can look them up and reach out to them and tell them you want climate champions on the board. There are 4 nominations that were made in April that are still awaiting hearings. So one thing is to say, hey, let's get these folks on the board. And then the last bit is we have a bit.ly there. So that's a link you can put in with a way to tell Congress you want this 100% clean electricity by 2035. Or, follow us on social media. As I said, the national landscape is changing regularly, and we have actions that you can take depending on what's going on at the federal level. Working with some of our allies that work more at the federal level than we do at this point. And my contact information is below for questions.
Hey, Maggie, thank you. That was excellent information. And I love the action opportunities that you presented at the end. I want to remind everybody, just so we can keep on schedule, that you will have an opportunity to either email the presenters directly or message them in the chat with your specific questions. But when you do the breakout sessions, the first section of the agenda on those breakouts is that you can do some Q&A. So if you have any one-on-one questions for Maggie with Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, please hold them for the breakout session or use the direct communication links. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next speaker, but that was a great overview on where we are with renewable energy, where we need to be, where we're going, and how to get there. So thank you so much, Maggie. Our next presenter is Heidi with the Department of Agriculture, and she's involved with the 319 program, which offers grants for watershed improvement projects across Tennessee. So Heidi McIntyre-Wilkinson, you are on.
All right. Thanks a lot. As he said, I'm with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, Land and Water Stewardship section. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about some of the good work that's going on in Tennessee regarding water quality, and specifically non-point source water quality. The goal of our section is really to reduce the impact that land use activities are having on our state's water quality by trying to decrease the amount of non-point source water pollution that's going into our streams and lakes. These are voluntary incentive programs, and they span both educational and outreach opportunities. So we've got both physical best management practices that are going on the ground that are physically helping to keep those pollutants out of our waterways, as well as providing education so that folks understand what actions that they're taking that may have detrimental effects to the environment. We have both a restoration and protection focus. So we not only want to look at impaired streams and try to improve them, but if we have outstanding streams or streams that maybe are habitat for a threatened or endangered species, we have grants available to help protect those areas. In addition, I just want to mention our main two programs that pretty much a lot of you that have come to these forums before have heard me talk about is the Agricultural Resources Conservation Fund, which is a state program that funds just agricultural non-point source practices, and the Section 319 grant, which is a federal grant given to us by EPA that we then pass through to local partners. But we are involved in a lot of other water quality improvement groups. We are involved with the Harmful Algal Bloom Working Group, along with TDEC and the Department of Health, to try to look at how possibly nutrient enrichment is causing beach closures because we're having these spikes of cyanobacteria. We're working with the Nutrient Reduction Task Force. So these two programs that I'm going to talk about is a large part of what we do in our section, but not all that we do in our section. And just some quick facts. This is just for the last 10 years. ARC Fund has put over 20,000 individual best management practices on the ground. And that is anything from a livestock waterer to 1,000 foot of fence to a grade stabilization structure. We have provided over $39 million for on the ground practices. And this comes from a fund that is provided through legislation where we get a small fraction of the property transfer tax. So every time property transfers hands in Tennessee, we get a very, very tiny portion of that. But as most of you, especially if you're in Middle Tennessee, know, the property market has been booming. And so as a consequence of that, we have actually been blessed with quite a bit of funding for the last several years. In addition to that 39 million, another 24 million has been leveraged through partnerships. So for every dollar that we give, we may get about 75 cents back from local investments. That might be the property owner, or that might be a federal partner sharing or splitting that cost with us. For our Section 319, it's a much smaller program, but we've put over 2,500 best management practices on the ground, spent over 10 million, and we've leveraged an additional $6.6 million in funds. I just want to note the Section 319, I didn't mention this before, but for those that are not familiar with that, that program is open to all sectors of non-point source pollution. You do not have to be just focusing on ag to qualify for one of these grants. Some of our other programs that we support include the West Tennessee River Basin Authority and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife partnerships for fish and wildlife. With those programs, we've put another 125 best management practices on the ground. Almost $1 million has been provided, and then we've leveraged another $4.7 million in partner funds. Some of the types of projects that we funded are in these 5 categories. Of course, agriculture is the brunt of what we do, what with us being the Department of Agriculture, but we also support projects that tackle leaking septic systems, urban concerns such as runoff from development with the implementation of rain gardens or constructed wetlands. We've partnered with the Forestry folks for education and outreach, specifically if y'all are familiar with the Welcome Wagon for people that have just purchased new stands of forest and how to responsibly harvest those. And abandoned mines, acid mine tailings, acid mine reclamation projects where we're actually trying to treat that acidic runoff, get that pH a little bit so that we can actually start getting some vegetation and stabilization in place. I really like this map. This shows where we've worked. These are HUC 12's hydrologic unit code 12 watersheds. And anywhere you see color, we have put practices on the ground. So the yellow areas are where we have done ARC fund work, the blue where we've done 319, and the green where we've had both. You can see a few gaps around Memphis and a little bit around Knoxville, but we have pretty good coverage and we do work in all 95 counties. We have some absolutely fantastic partners from the federal level with EPA, USDA, NRCS, and US Fish and Wildlife. Our state partners such as TDEC. Regionally, we work with the RC&D councils like the Southeast RC&D and the Clinch-Powell RC&D. They've often been recipients of our grants. We've got both county and city partners who have put in for grants. Mountain City, Knox County have been partners in the past. Non-governmental agencies and not-for-profits such as TEC, the Cumberland River Compact, the Emory River Watershed Association, and colleges and universities like Tennessee State University and UT, especially their UT Extension program. We have so many partners here. This is just a very small sampling of who all has supported our work and who are doing their own work in addition to what they've been partnering with us. Some of our other partners, and probably the most important ones, are our property owners and volunteers. So we can't put any of these practices on the ground unless we have the folks to actually, the boots on the ground to actually do the work. And that often falls to the property owners and definitely to our volunteers. We measure success by getting streams off of the list of threatened and, the list of impaired and threatened streams, formerly the 303D list. We have improved over 150 stream miles. That means we have delisted them for one or more parameters. I would love it if y'all would go and check out our success stories. They're typically only about 2 pages, but if you want the particulars about what was wrong with these streams and how they were cleaned up, these are great little short reads. And some action items if you want to get involved, start in your own backyard or in your own neighborhood. Evaluate your property. Do you have the potential for stormwater improvements? I really like to promote UT's Smart Yard program. That gives you a great checklist to go through and see, do I potentially have any problems in my own yard? Am I soil testing? Am I over fertilizing? Am I using too much pesticide? Also get to know your watershed. Is your watershed in good shape? Does your watershed have certain problems? And engage with your homeowners association if you live in a neighborhood and you think maybe you live in a condo and don't really have very much property or no property at all. Sometimes engaging with your homeowners association, if there's a common area or common property, you can start getting them educated in what steps they can take to help mitigate non-point source water pollution. And be ready for action. Install practices where you can. You don't have to be a farmer with 300 acres to make improvements. Put in rain barrels. Make sure that you are not, again, over applying fertilizer or pesticide if you live in the city. Think about installing a rain garden. You can volunteer with your local groups. A lot of your watershed associations are always looking for folks that are willing to do some oftentimes very backbreaking work to get these practices installed. Spread the word. Educate your neighbors as kindly as you can. If you see your neighbor dumping used oil into a storm drain, gently make them understand, hey, that goes to the river. That's not something that we need to do. Here's what you can do instead. Here's when there's local pickup for used oil or something of that nature. And consider getting organized. Join a local watershed association, or if there's not one in your area, create one of your own. Engage with the partners that I've listed and the partners in your area. Then you can apply for grants and leverage funds yourself. Just before I am done, I want to go ahead and talk to you about the 319 grant program. There is still time to apply for this year. These grants are open to not-for-profits, city, county governments, universities, and colleges. The proposal is going to be due on December 1st. And we have both watershed funds, which means for practices that you're going to put on the ground, and education and outreach funds. If you want to find some more information, I really recommend that you visit our website here for the non-point source grant program. And you can submit those to my supervisor, Sam Marshall. And like I said, you've got till December the 1st to create a plan and get that in. Are there any questions or concerns? I kind of went through that rather rapidly. So if there, I think I have time for questions. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yeah, we'll take one question, see how it goes from there.
Alrighty.
If anybody has a question live for Heidi.
This is Mike Wyatt. Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes, please.
I'm wondering, this is for everyone, actually. I'm wondering where you are, and I hope you've been through this, in the identification of stakeholders and putting together the full spectrum of people affected by certain policies and finding ways to engage them into helping to solve their own problems, along with people that have the science and the knowledge to implement good practice.
We lean very heavily on our partners for that. We feel that our partners are the ones that are best in tune with their community, and they know where the needs are. Part of the development of what we call a watershed-based plan is looking into where education and outreach needs to take place. And so I know that's a little bit of a pushing it to the side, but we actually do rely very heavily on our partners. I don't know what the needs are in, say, Chattanooga or in rural Grundy County, whereas our local partners would.
Hey, Heidi, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Sure
I
thing.
really like the opportunities you presented for action people can take. And I hope y'all are taking good notes. And by the way, this is recorded too. So you will be able to look back as soon as we get that posted, which should be by Monday. And I want to just go ahead and move on because we do have a lot of interaction taking place in the breakout rooms, and I want to keep us on schedule. But knowing that a third of our rivers and streams are still impaired, there's great opportunities to get involved, and those ones that you presented, Heidi, are on point. And obviously we don't have to create anything new. There are plenty of things we can get involved with that already exist as far as programs that you've seen already. So I'm just going to transition over to our next presenter, which is Ashby Barnes with the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation, Division of Solid Waste. And Ashby, he knows probably more than anybody from the waste created in every county in Tennessee, from every part of waste. So knows quite a bit about the issues there. So I'll hand it over to you, Ashby.
Thank you, Jeff. This is Ashby Barnes. I'm with the TDEC Division of Solid Waste Management in the Materials Management Program. Everybody can hopefully hear me. I'm going to turn off my video because I was given the warning that my internet is unstable. That's the hotel Wi-Fi, but hopefully that shouldn't impact you being able to see the presentation. Let's see here. Okay, so share the screen. Okay, so now I gotta get to that button. That'll let me
We can see
start
your
this.
screen, so you're good
Yeah.
there.
Okay. Okay, can you still see the screen? Jeff, can you still see the screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. So
okay. So this is basically the rundown. We actually have just finished our annual reporting for the 2020 year. And just to kind of give you a breakdown of the tonnage that was generated in 2020 and versus 2019. The first numbers, these are this was what was disposed of in Tennessee landfills. We actually have landfills in the state that receive waste from out of state, but that is not used in calculating these numbers. These are just Tennessee counties right here. So this is Tennessee tonnages that's disposed of either in Tennessee or outside of Tennessee. Class 1 is municipal solid waste, household, but businesses as well as commercial and industrial sources. Class 2 landfills, we don't actually track. Those are basically where a company has its own disposal landfill, and they put whatever they generate into that landfill. It doesn't go into a class 1, or it does not go into a class 3-4. The class 3-4 disposal, excuse me, landfills are also known as construction and demolition, C&D landfills. As you can see, there was a slight increase in disposal for class 1, but there was a much larger increase for disposal in class 3-4, partly due, in my opinion, to some natural disasters we had in 2020, but also there was some COVID related home improvements. And so, as Jeff said, we do have, county by county data, but this is statewide. But as a whole, we actually had a lot of C&D material that was generated last year. And, our county sources basically say they saw the uptick because of people being stuck at home and they had time to clean, refurbish, build something new. And so that generated more material that went into a C&D landfill. Recycling and diversion, 2019 to 2020, there was also an increase in recycling and diversion. And recycling is basically where the material is actually made into a new, different material. And diversion is nothing more than it was diverted from a class 1 landfill. And so statewide numbers again, our statewide recycling and diversion rate went from 60 to 62%, 2019 to 2020. So we honestly thought we would see some disruption last year due to COVID. And while we did see some counties that had some issues, with recycling and diversion at the county level, they saw a corresponding decrease in class 1 disposal as well. So luckily for these counties, they didn't get stuck with a very large disposal and a very small recycling and diversion tonnage. So overall, we actually didn't have as much issue with COVID as we thought, as far as how it affected our recycling and diversion rates. And this is from 2019, but it's pretty similar for 2020. This is a map showing the landfills in Tennessee and how much tonnage there was being disposed in them. And plus you can see the counties that generate the most material. You've got your southwest corner there for Shelby County. You've got Middle Tennessee, but Middle Tennessee is Davidson County. Then you've got Rutherford County. Clarksville is contributing. Then you've got the Chattanooga, Hamilton County area. Then you've got the Knoxville area, and then you actually have the Tri-Cities area up in the Northeast as well. And then, so basically we get our data for disposal from 35 in-state class 1 landfills, 59 class 3, class 4 landfills, also known as C&D, and we have 77 in-state transfer stations. And then the counties that export their waste out of Tennessee report that to us in their annual reporting as well. And then the statewide recycling and diversion data, county governments report their material to us, and then they get reports from the cities in their region, institutions and commercial and industrial entities that report to the county government. And then, they basically send that up the line to us. And I kept my bullet points sort of simple, but as far as like the dealing with disposal numbers, I mean, if you want to decrease disposal, one of the things you can do is reduce the waste that you produce, find out ways of talking to your local government about reducing waste. Advocate for recycling. You know, if you don't have recycling in your community, then you talk to your local government about what it would take to get recycling going. And then also an issue like, while we have within the state and nationwide seen an increase in recycling, we've actually also seen an increase in recycling contamination, meaning material is being recycled that unfortunately gets to a recycling or recovered materials facility, and it can't be recycled because it's been contaminated by some other waste. So try not to wish cycle. Basically think, oh, this could be recycled, put it in the bin, and then it goes to a processing facility where it can't be recycled. But again, that's where you work on, you know, your local government level to find out what can be recycled, so that you make sure you're not trying to recycle something that can't be. And then thanks for listening. And I'm just going to show you real quick. These are my colleagues, Trey White, Bishop Wagner, Christina Perez, myself. And then this is our statewide territories map. While I live in Davidson County, I cover East and Northeast Tennessee. Bishop covers North Central and Northwest. And Christina, she is in Memphis. She covers South Central, Southwest. So that is our area of, like, if you live in one of these counties, you can contact us, really any of us, and we can get you to the right person. We can't answer your question. We will at least work to get it answered for you. So there's my contact information if you want it, and I'll just leave that up there. Anyone have any questions?
Hey, I want to pause the questions right now because the next presentation from SERDC, the Southeast Recycling Development Council, presented by Will and Jennifer, will kind of augment and complement the information you've presented. And so I will wrap up, or we will combine the questions for you and Will and Jennifer after Will and Jennifer do their presentation, if that works for you.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing. So.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. Great information, a great overview of the solid waste picture in Tennessee, which we rarely get to see the big picture. So thanks for sharing that information with us, as well as action steps. We got Will and Jennifer with the Southeast Recycling Development Council. So if you'd like to share your screen and take it away.
Have you got the screen up now?
Yes, we can see it. Looks great.
Thank you. All right, thank you. And I'm sorry, Jen's not with us anymore. She had another appointment at noon our time. The Southeast Recycling Development Council was formed in 2005, really looking at the strong manufacturing base in the Southeast that consumes material from our programs, but many of the programs across the state or across the region perform less than optimal. I'm sorry about that. We're in need of improving the amount of material that's generated here, because many of our manufacturers actually have to go out of the region and sometimes out of the country to get sufficient material to run their facilities. So we several came together and formed the mission statement that you have. And really, we're trying to get government and industry and the others involved in recycling onto the same platform, because sometimes the operations and goals of government and industry don't always align. We all are concerned in advancing recycling, but sometimes there's a communication misconnect there. And we've worked through the years to bring that together, and also to help develop the education and outreach that goes out to the community, so that we can have strong programs. And we've done a lot of work in working to help local governments run efficient programs and keep their costs down. And we've done much of that work in Tennessee with TDEC, with Ashby and others in that office. We do have a long-term vision of actually building the industrial base and creating more jobs in Tennessee and the rest of the region. Our region covers 11 states. you know, we all know that recycling is good for the environment, but we're also going to make a strong case and do research to document that recycling is very good for our economy as well. We've done that also, an impact study in Tennessee on the effect that recycling has in the economy. We want to get more material out of our programs. We want to get the right material in these programs. And we sometimes engage in some other activities to promote recycling. We've held several recycling days in the Tennessee legislature and some other activities like that in the region. Just briefly, these are our sponsors. I just put this up really for disclosure, because if you follow the #1 rule in journalism, it is to see where does the money come from. But these, we do have state and individual members, but these are the sponsors that put in the majority of the funding that keeps our program moving forward. Part of our work that we completed 10 years ago and updated 5 years ago was to really look at the demand for material in the Southeast. And this interactive map that there's a screenshot here is on our website, but this represents 362 manufacturing facilities that are either wholly or in large part dependent upon recycled material as their feedstock in their production of consumer products or somewhere in that value chain. 40 of these facilities are in Tennessee. There's a strong manufacturing base across the volunteer state. And in these, we've counted 7,700 jobs. And these are manufacturing jobs. These aren't service industry jobs. These are the high paying jobs that you're in. Economic developers and others really seek to bring into communities to go after these. And, you know, they're putting $4 billion for almost $4.5 billion of sales into the economy in Tennessee every year. And we need to remember those jobs that are around Tennessee as well also matter, because an awful lot of what we see focused here is about what happens in Tennessee. And in working with Ashby and the others in our government agencies and local governments, everybody focuses on their state, but you need to recognize that private industry doesn't look at state boundaries as a barrier. And our recycling materials do move distances across state lines. They don't slow down at all. It's at 70 miles an hour when they cross the state lines, the possible exception of the I-40 in Pigeon River Gorge. But the, you know, all of these facilities here have the potential to be vying for the materials that are captured in your programs. And they need that material in order to maintain and stay focused as they go forward. We heard a lot in the last 3 years that recycling isn't working, that China bought everything that we had and that they stopped buying all of that. And that was what I didn't use our slide of all the headlines, but we've really been working hard to label that as fake news. China did put some restrictions on what recycling they bought from the United States in the early 2018. But to get that in perspective, the United States consumes 70% of everything that's collected, exporting only 30%, and China was only half of that. So everything that China bought from the United States was only 15% of our market. But then, and their restrictions didn't eliminate everything. It did hit some commodities harder than others, particularly plastics. But a lot of material still continued to move, and a lot of it went to other places instead of China. That said, it did push our prices down in 2018, and that was difficult for a lot of our program operators. But if you look at our 16 years of pricing history that I've got here, and this is for plastics, that's PET is your #1 plastic, soda bottles and such, and then colored HDPE, and then clear HDPE, which is largely your milk jugs and other untinted polyethylene or high density polyethylene. And our prices for these materials have been volatile the whole time. They go up and they go down because we have a very inelastic supply, and small changes in demand will force these price swings. But we are currently experiencing in some cases, record highs, particularly with high density polyethylene. Colored is trading at its peak that it had a few years ago. And seems to be sustaining it. It's going to maintain that price because there's a lot of future orders out. And we look what's happened to our clear HDPE, the milk jugs. I mean, these prices now for this material is worth more than aluminum cans. And I've been at this for 32 years. And if you'd have told me that just anywhere in the last 30, I'd have said that would never happen, but it has. A lot of this is driven by product goals for consumer recycled content and consumer packaging. And I am going to get to that in a next slide. But this, just look at our prices for plastics have been volatile, but we are currently experiencing some very strong pricing out there right now for all of our materials. Looking at paper and at aluminum cans, we see much of the same trends. It's volatile, it's up and down, and prices are on an upswing, and mixed paper now pushing right at $100 a ton. When we can make money at $100 a ton for mixed paper, recognize mixed paper 3 years ago was trading at a minus $5 a ton. Meaning you had to pay $5 a ton to load it on the truck for somebody to take it. Everybody said there's no demand. Even at that point, it went on the truck and down the road into the paper mill and was still consumed. Our volumes of material captured and consumed haven't changed all that much, but the pricing has been pushed up considerably for these. And so it's no longer the case of how do we fund the programs, but we need to make sure we're putting the right material into them. I was asked to speak in this on what do we see happening in the legislative arena, and there is an awful lot going on at the federal level with recycling. The Save Our Seas Act passed, and it's going to impact plastics in particular. There's a funding mechanism there for $55 million a year for improving material management, and possibly some more monies, particularly for local governments at $10 million a year. Now, 55 million and 10 million a year sounds like a lot of money, but that's for the whole country. And so we're talking, if that's over 50 states, we're down to 5.5 million or 6.5 million per state. And there's 95 counties in Tennessee. That's not going to be a large game changer in funding, but it is, if it's structured as it's going to be distributed to where those communities with matching monies are the ones that will be the successful grant recipients and get larger shares of this money rather than it being a per capita distribution, then we may see some significant program improvements in places where they are successfully competitive. There's a lot of other action going on in DC right now. I haven't counted all these, but we've got a lot of bills that are floating around in Congress right now, or from one committee to another, some of them moving faster than others. The one I would watch the most is the Recycle Act. It does seem to have legs and a lot of support. And it too will have some funding that will be available back to programs across the country. So there's a lot going on there. Until we see them really be adopted, I don't want to get too far into the weeds of the details of any of those, but there is a lot there. I think much more importantly what we have going on now is the commitments from our brands, the companies that make the consumer products that we're purchasing. That's what's driving the price of the materials up now. That we're seeing because they're wanting to get recycled content into their packaging and into their products. Some of them have set some very aggressive goals. Here, you think you'll recognize most of these labels here. Seventh Generation has been environmentally conscious from its onset, but as well as Burt Bees, Unilever, Pepsi, Coca-Cola, and I only have them here as examples. There are many more setting some very aggressive goals for the next 3 to 8 years of how much material they're going to use in their packaging that's come from recycling programs. And Coca-Cola is really looking to measure how much material they're causing to be captured back through local programs. They're funding grants through organizations like the Recycling Partnership and through SERDC. We've got grant monies available for local government programs that will improve the capture of recycling material, but they're looking so that every container they put on the market, they're going to capture a container to that equal number by 2030. And in terms of planning and building programs, that's not very far away. The amount of material that's going to be consumed in that to be transitioned to recycled content is putting a very positive demand on our markets and leading to the prices that we were looking at.
Hey, Will, real quick, we're about out of time for this segment. So I'm wondering if you could just wrap up the last couple slides here. Sorry.
We have a program that was funded by TDEC and SERDC to provide some local government assistance for their messaging so we can get the right materials into your programs. And we certainly encourage you to check out Recycle Right Tennessee. We can have the ability to make custom pages for your community for what goes in there using a universal set of graphics that will be consistent across the state. And my slide are advancing. But we've developed this. It is available. I would certainly like to talk more about that if we weren't pushed for time. But Ashby's group funded this project. It's out there and it's available. There's about 40 communities in Tennessee that have signed up for it already. It's there. Our recommendations to go forward are first to bring the Recycle Right Tennessee into your communications, and please reach out to Jen or to I for more information about that. And then, as Ashby said, your local government officials need to know that you care about recycling. We've seen several communities where recycling has been restricted or collection eliminated, Chattanooga for one. And they need your local government officials, your city council, your county commissioners, your county mayor. They need to hear from you. If they need to hear from you, not only you, but encourage your neighbors to do the same. They do pay attention when their phone rings a lot. And lastly, to remember, to make this all work, you need to look to buy a recycle. Thank you. Our contact information is in the slides, which I assume will be available later.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Will. That's great information. And again, since we are out of time for this section of the presentation, if you do have specific questions for Will or Ashby, you can chat them directly in the chat section here, or join their session in the breakouts, which we will be getting to in just a few minutes. So we next on our agenda is Heather Slayton with Tennessee Division of Forestry, which is part of the Department of Agriculture, talking about natural climate solutions, forestry in Tennessee, and the landscape in that regard. Are you ready, Heather? Yes.
Hey, I think you guys are on mute.
Heather, we cannot hear you, so I'm not sure if you are on mute, but it doesn't look like you are. But we're not hearing you at this point.
All right, how about now?
Yes.
All
you're
right,
good.
good deal. All right, I apologize for that, and I will go ahead and start from the beginning. Good thing I just got through my name, so that's good. And I actually did thank you, Jeff, for inviting me to be a part of this forum. But yeah, my name's Heather Slayton, and I'm the Assistant State Forester for the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, Division of Forestry. So I'm happy to see a bunch of Heidi on here too. We're Department of Agriculture. We like to manage all of our natural areas holistically as possible. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how our Tennessee forests can be climate solutions, and I'll have some action steps at the end. But I'd like to go ahead and just level set on the condition of our forest right now. Many of you are aware that every 10 years, as directed by the U.S. Forest Service, state agencies are mandated to create a forest action plan. So the 2020-2030 Forest Action Plan was just been released and is the second iteration of our statewide action plans. And these plans are for the entire state, the state's forests, not forests that are owned by any specific agency. What goes into these plans is a tremendous amount of data analysis that my staff collect, our forest inventory analysis staff collect data constantly on our forest, and every 5 to 7 years it's analyzed and a point in time data set is produced. And so part of this action plan, we have a section where we just give you the status update of our forest in Tennessee. But I just pulled out some very high level characteristics of our state's forest. Luckily, we've actually grown in forest area in Tennessee. I mean, we still are roughly around 50 to 53% in about 14 million acres. So our forests in Tennessee are very unique and play a huge role in providing climate solutions. Our forests are aging. They're 65% of our forest is in the what we call the higher end of our rotation age, and for hardwoods generally that's around 60 to 100 years old, and for pine generally that's anywhere from 40 to 60 years old. That's what us foresters call a rotation age. Additionally, about 83% of our forest, 83% of this 14 million acres are owned by private forest landowners. So that's a tremendous asset that we have in Tennessee. And of those owners, the majority of them are 55 years old and older. And then 94% of our forested parcels are less than 50 acres. So as we go through this presentation, I just want you guys to keep these 4 characteristics in mind, that we have a tremendous amount of forest land in Tennessee. It is starting to age out a little bit, but majority of those forests are owned by private landowners, and but they are owned in small parcels. So that's very important to keep in mind. So what do the trees look like that are growing in our 14 million acres of forest? This graph here, and this is in the Forest Action Plan, is a snapshot in time again, as I said, for our inventory data. But you've got on the x-axis your years, and then broken up into softwood and hardwood. For the sake of this conversation, I'm just going to focus on the hardwood resource. And then on the y-axis is volume. Okay, and the color of bars, you guys can read it, but I'll go ahead and describe them. But there's a light blue, which would be the first to the left in the hardwood series. That's our grade 1. If you're not familiar with our grades, that's the best log you can get, like a veneer log, a really nice, clear, straight log. The next grade is orange, grade 2. Those are, your kind of run-of-the-mill hardwood lumber, or any other kind of like railroad tie type of log. So not something that's going to be veneer, and probably not something that's going to be made out of whiskey barrels either. And then there's grade 3 in the gray, and those are grades that are barely making any kind of product other than pulp and fiber. And then below grade is definitely either pulpwood or stems that actually cannot be made into any kind of product. So, and then there's a darker blue called no log, and that's just more of like a shrub type layer. So you can just kind of tell by this graph and the trajectory that our grade 1s are declining over the past decade or so. Our grade 2s are also in decline. And then our grade 3s, which we mentioned could be tie logs, but mainly it's just pulpwood. That's kind of been steady, but the more concerning piece of information from this graph is that below grade, which is the yellow. And we all can see that that's increased exponentially over the course of the times that are indicated on that x-axis. So remember, I just mentioned that our forests are getting old. We still have a lot of trees. That's phenomenal. But they are aging out, and the structure of the forest is starting to move into that below grade structure. All right, I don't know if you can see Chuck is in the waiting room there. I got him. All right, so what does this all mean as in the context of this conversation? I mean, how are Tennessee's forests can be climate solutions? But let's just define what that means, right? So, what makes a forest a viable climate solution is they're healthy. They've got to be healthy. They've got to be growing. They've got to be vibrant, full of energy, and they've got to be diverse. And the diversity and the resiliency kind of go together. So when I say diversity, I mean like in species composition. You don't have totally one type of species growing in your forest. They're all different sizes, they're all different heights, they're all different spatial arrangements. And when we have a diverse forest, that in turn makes it more resilient. So as defined by our forest action plan, resiliency is the degree to which systems can recover from a disturbance without a major shift in composition and function. So we want our forests to be able to respond to disturbances effectively. And forests that are old and they're aging and they are full of poorly formed stems or stems that have just come to the end of their life are not going to be able to respond as well as a more vibrant young growing forest. And that's just kind of basic, when you look at biology in general. So diverse and resilient forests are super important to climate solutions. And then the forests need to be abundant and connected. And we don't have a problem with abundancy in Tennessee. I mean, again, I just mentioned over half of the state land base is forested. So, us foresters really, rally behind that. There's a lot of trees out there. It's great. But, connectivity is a huge priority for us. Connectivity in regards to climate corridors, habitat corridors, forests being connected so they can have like more landscape level impacts. And this is not only for traditional forestry use. This is for the myriad of forest values that we all have in our head right now. And there's a very diverse listener base here on this particular forum, and we all know appreciate forests for what they are in our own way. But being connected has a inherent benefit to the values that our forests provide. But aside from the science, it's very important that our forests are appreciated. And again, I know I'm kind of like speaking to the choir here, but I mentioned that a lot of our forests are owned, well, 83% of our forests are owned by private landowners, and those parcels are pretty small. So it's important that folks understand how their forest, how their chunk of the land rolls up to the bigger picture, and how what they do matters in the bigger picture. And it's kind of exactly what Heidi said. She said it really well. It doesn't matter if you're a 300-acre farmer or just somebody that's got a goat pasture. Like, what you can do on your property matters in the bigger picture. So knowing that our forests are appreciated is something really important to us. Pivoting back to our forest action plan, I mentioned we've just released it. We finished it, I guess, in December. We partnered with the Nature Conservancy, and we, as the Division of Forestry, I should have probably started with that. That's our mandate in order to receive federal funds to do forest management in Tennessee. We produce these action plans, and we're the lead author in it. But we decided to partner with the Nature Conservancy this year to help understand, just expand on our knowledge of the need for our values of our forest. And so what we did is we put together 4 main objectives in that forest action plan that on which we're going to focus for the next 10 years. And those elements are enhancing forest health and resiliency, maintaining and improving connected landscapes, expanding market diversification. And in that sense, it is markets for all the ecosystem services that the forests provide. And then strengthening wildfire resilient communities. So those are the 4 main areas that we've identified as focal areas for the next 10 years of conservation activities that are, expand beyond the Division of Forestry, beyond the Department of Agriculture. It's for all the conservation activities of Tennessee and all of our partners that participate in that arena. So where are we gonna focus? We took 3 main data sets and put them together on this composite map. And this is kind of going to be our roadmap for the next 10 years of implementing some strategies and action steps that are identified in the Forest Action Plan. But we took the Nature Conservancy's Connected and Resilient Landscape data set. I think some of y'all are familiar with that data set on this call. The U.S. Forest Service Forest Carbon Stocking Estimate. So where's the carbon being sequestered? Where's it being put to work? And then the U.S. Forest Service Forest to Faucets data layer, which highlights the importance of forest to surface drinking water. We put all those together and made this composite map. So, and this is also again in the action plan. Just want to let you know that's where we, the Division of Forestry and the Nature Conservancy, and all of our partners that helped us write this plan have agreed that these are the areas where we like to focus most of our conservation efforts. Okay, so what can you do to be part of that solution? I absolutely encourage everybody to read that action plan. So I've got that QR code put up there on the screen. It goes to the Division of Forestry's website, and you can navigate to it from there. But if anybody struggles, like some websites that like I do, it's buried. So we just wanted to put a QR code up there to make it easy for folks to access that Forest Action Plan. And read it. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of information in that action plan. And we built those strategies and those action steps to be as general as possible so as to encourage creative thinking and to encourage, just folks to understand that, we're not trying to prescribe something to the nth level that they feel that they have to do that. Like everybody can lean in on this conversation in their own way and bring their own resources to the table. I mentioned earlier, the value of being, our forest being appreciated. So understand that what you do is part of the bigger picture. We manage these forests holistically. We can't continue to build these silos and manage one by one. It's just not going to work when it comes to really leaning in on climate solutions. And we definitely subscribe to actively forest management. Equates to appreciation of your forest, and actively forest management can be anything that you spend time in your woods and you understand what the species are and what the values they bring. It could be traditional timber management, it could be wildlife management, it could be managing for riparian areas for clean water. Whatever it is, it just needs to be actively managed and appreciated. And then I want to give a shout out to the Environmental Council and Jeff and Cynthia on the call to we love planting trees. We do it every year, right, Jeff? We plant thousands of trees all across the state of Tennessee with the Tree Day event. So plant a tree, or you could help collect seed for the next tree. We do have a campaign that we're getting ready to release as a call to help us collect white oak acorns. I don't know if you guys are kind of keyed in on that, but there's a white oak initiative out there. We've got a tremendous demand for whiskey barrels, and we saw that spike during COVID. You can probably, come to your own conclusions as why people are consuming more whiskey during COVID. But the Chinese are definitely gobbling up as much whiskey as we can produce. And so we're really trying hard to be sustainable stewards to the white oak species, in addition to all of our other species. So we're just going to kick off a campaign to call for assistance to help collect acorns for that tree. But whatever you do, if you plant a tree, plant it, where it wants to be, where it needs to be, and just appreciate that tree. So finally, here's my contacts. Love to hear from you. Love to chat with you about anything that you've read in that Forest Action Plan, any questions or anything that you had to offer as an agency, as an individual, as an organization to kind of lean in on this whole conversation. So I appreciate Jeff again for inviting me to be a speaker, and look forward to the breakout sessions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Heather. That's eye-opening information, and especially that statewide assessment of our forests and the action steps, all of that. And I appreciate the format and all of the speakers and presenters sticking to that, so we all know what needs to be done and what the opportunities are to get involved in. And so we will be exploring each of those. I've created the rooms. I'm putting the donation link in the chat now. So if I'd like to invite everybody to consider making a small donation to support Tennessee Environmental Council and the continuation of these policy and practice forums. And I've created so that link is there in the chat. If you could all take a moment and consider that, I appreciate that very much. But we have one change in the rooms since John Fenderson, who was the lead on regenerative agriculture. I'm sorry, I didn't jump to Stewart. So I didn't mean to leave you out, Stewart. So let's go ahead and listen to Stewart. And if you can keep it to 5 minutes, that'd be great. 5 to 7. And then we're gonna break out into rooms, and you get to choose who you would like to hang out with for about 15 minutes before we come back and conclude the forum. So go ahead and take it away, Stewart.
Thank you. Good try to get by without hearing from me.
I'll have to apologize that for the next 5 years, I suppose.
You'll never live that one down. I promise, although I've made this promise before, that I will be very brief, because I think even though we had one last speaker, I think we've gotten a lot of information, and people may really want and need more time in the small groups. I promise that, but I have no idea once I start talking really what happens. So I just wanted to give a quick review of some things. I'm Stewart Clifton. I'm not a staff person. I'm the contract lobbyist for Tennessee Conservation Voters, and most of the people on this call are, I think, probably involved with one and sometimes more than one of our member groups, which range all the way from the League of Women Voters to Scenic Rivers Association, SACE, obviously Tennessee Environmental Council, and many, many others. So I am a lobbyist. I work year round, but I mostly work in terms of number of hours during the legislative session, getting ready for it, monitoring, reporting, and actually lobbying on key bills, both for and against. So I wanted to just do very brief things today. I believe obviously people might be interested in wanting to know what are some of the important topics that have been discussed and will be discussed coming up. And then we'll do an overview of who's in the General Assembly, not much time at all there. I will explain to you the universe through an organizational chart, and then a little bit about how a bill becomes law. And we'll talk about some specific issues if we have some time. So some of the important topics. Okay. Here's the overview. And I know this is not specific to environmental interest, but you got to kind of know what's going on. And I know there's federal and local public policy being made. I focus mostly on state. So I'm focusing on my comments mostly on state. There's a lot of bills that get filed every year that could pass. Luckily, given the nature of a lot of the bills, only a minority of those pass. Over 600 bills passed over the last year, though. We have new acts that are now in effect, and not all of those were environmental by any means, but a lot of things happen down there, and I am there whenever they're open. You know, I am a hands-on lobbyist. I go to the committee meetings. I submit reports to anyone who wants them, and many of you are already getting those, and if not, this is a good time for me to mention that I just put up in chat my email address and phone number. Be happy to put you on the list of folks who get regular updates during the session and in the session reports. Whether you're a part of a member group or not, individuals can just ask to be part of that network of information that goes out. So the other thing about this is
just to give you a sense of what the background is, the blue is Democrats, the red is Republicans, and it's just important to note here that you may never have noticed this, but we have a Republican legislature, and a lot that doesn't really say a lot. It just says that groups that are concerned with being partisan groups one way or the other, we're not that. You know, very few bills are passed without the help of members of both parties, and almost no bills are passed without there being some crossover and Republicans supporting bills that may be Democratic inspired. But it's an important note that you should take note of the fact that the approach of advocates has to take into account that both parties need to be contacted, relationships need to be made. Right now, this is an old slide. There are now 6 blue dots on the Senate side instead of 5. So it's 27 to 6. And on the House side, it's exactly the same as it's been for 2 or 3 years. 73 Republicans and 26 Democrats, I believe is what that is. So that's my first point. It's a partisan General Assembly, and all advocates who are successful reach out to people from both parties, whatever their own personal beliefs are. Next. Call this to your attention. The legislature is, you know, the center of the universe. It's just, this is the way the universe looks to them. So they're the center. The executive branch, the judicial branch, they're out there. They have their role, but they're kind of not as important, and are not really, shouldn't be really in control. And same for local government and federal government. Yes, we probably need a local government and federal government, but it's really us. Now, I say all that not to be totally catty, but what that says is the state legislature is a lot like you and me, because we all think we're at the center of everything. The reason I bring that up is knowing that and acting on it, then what you would want to do is let them know you think they're important and you think they're doing things that are good for the state, and that you want to be helping them make good decisions. But it's important to notice that they, in fact, really are very committed to their own importance. I hope that doesn't sound too negative. It's just they like it when their constituents reach out to them. It shows that they're important. They like it when groups want to be friends and provide them with information, at least in a fairly useful way, and not a lot of screaming. So I just wanted to throw those things in there. They're not specifically environmental issues, but they're very important for environmental advocacy, and particularly at the state level. Next. We're not going to have a test on this, but other things that I thought you would want to know, and again, Jeff, these are not specific to this year, but I hope we'll get into those in the breakout room. Point about all this is it's very hard for a bill to become a law, because every one of these bills that become a law have to go through all of these steps and get down to the bottom before a bill becomes law. So it's a lot easier to stop a bill than to start a bill. And if you're going to be doing legislative work, you need to find a way to learn about this process and know exactly what you're doing and who you're doing it for and with, because it's all stacked against bills becoming law. And a lot of the fairly innocuous but good bills for the environment over the last few years have simply not become law, because it has to go through all these different hoops and come out the other end with identical language in both the House and the Senate. Next.
Wow, Stewart, that was
Oh, I'm not through.
oh, okay. I saw the
I
question.
saw you gave me three more minutes, and I'm not through. We're just pulling up something else.
Okay, okay.
What I didn't do was, oh yeah, some important topics. And these are things that I see as being major for next year, some more generic than others, and also they were pretty important in our last session. We are always fighting against relaxation of water quality protections, and there are private interests in the state who really do not care, frankly, about the safety of residences close by and the quality of water. And we sometimes win and we sometimes lose that, but that will be a major issue again next year. We will continue to fight for open meetings and open government. It turns out that the environmental community probably has more to gain by having open meetings and open government generally and open records than any other sector. And we have been very successful, particularly this last year, at stopping efforts to sort of close access to records, close access to meetings, realizing we're in a strange time with how many things are not in person. It's still, we were able to play a big role in stopping some serious erosions in open government. An important issue next year will be continuing to fight litter on land and in the water. That is the way we choose to frame the issue, that we need dramatic help in keeping plastics out of the water, including keeping litter and plastics of all kinds out of our woodlands, and frankly, it's an important way to frame it. What we've got is a massive litter issue. Maybe that doesn't sound very classically universal. Maybe it seems like a small way to look at it, but fighting litter in a very sophisticated way will mean we have to pass a great deal of funding and a great deal of new laws to work for cleaner water and cleaner land. Also, clean energy has been a real topic lately, and it's been a bipartisan issue with some successes at the legislature. You may not have known, for instance, that we worked on and saw a bill pass that is a significant step forward in encouraging clean energy and helping businesses finance clean energy improvements. It was bipartisan with no opposition. More about that at some other time. So those are a few things. I also have something, as I say, I posted saying, let me know if you have a specific question or if you want more information than we have given out. But I also have something I'd love to send you by email, which are 10 basic tips for the occasional lobbyist. And as most of you know, you don't have to register to be a lobbyist, you know, if you're not being paid to do it. We still allow citizens to lobby without going through a lot of hoops, but you can do more damage than you can do good if you and the groups you're with are not thinking carefully about how to do it effectively. And I've got these 10 tips that we don't have time for today. Jeff, I will stop now and we'll talk more in the small group.
Thank you so much, Stewart. That's excellent. Always good to see the opportunities there at the policy level on the state level. And I know there's a lot of dovetail with federal and even local. But I'm going to go ahead and click the open all rooms, and you will see the rooms available to you. I'm going to do that right now. So you all have been invited to join a breakout room. You can pick which one you want. And the person who presented on that topic will be there to take care of that.